Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Joe Joyce, the British prospect who's currently 8-0, is the big winner in the latest WBA rankings. He is actually above the rankings now. So recently he fought Bermans-Deverne in the UK, advanced to 8-0, stopped Bermans-Deverne in 6 rounds, a one-sided beatdown, and as a result of that he won the WBA gold title. And I think like many, I assumed that was just another sort of trinket piece of hardware that, it didn't really mean too much, and it was more so for sanctioning fees, all that sort of stuff. And then after that, there was talk that Joe Joyce would become the mandatory to Manuel Charr. He would eventually face him at some point. But apparently that gold title means a lot more than many of us would have figured, because you look at the rankings here, and Joe Joyce is above the rankings. So you go Anthony Joshua as the WBA Super Champion, followed by a WBA World Champion, so that's the regular title, Manuel Charr. And then you have WBA Gold Champion Joe Joyce. So it's worth noting, he is now above interim World Champion Trevor Bryan. So he is above Bryan in the pecking order. So this isn't a mistake. The WBA now has 4 world champions. They are classing Joyce as a world champion of sorts. Whether you or I put much stock into the gold title, that's another matter, but for the WBA and its purposes, it is saying that he is a bona fide champion here and above Trevor Bryan. So that's rather interesting in itself, but there is talk that Joyce and Charr will be on for potentially later in the year. But yeah, when I saw that, because I was going through the rankings, I didn't pay too much to the top of the, the Joshua Charr, but because that's always there, it doesn't change. Looking down, and I was thinking, actually, okay, you've got someone who's just entered the rankings here, so who's fallen out? And I was looking at the list and I was like, hang on, where's Joe Joyce gone? And when I looked up, I was like, whoa, WBA Gold Champion Joe Joyce, so he's not part of the rankings, he's above it now, considered a world champion, at least by the WBA. I think for many fans, would be like, well, really, is this really a legitimate title, especially when you go there handing them out like candy? They've got 4 champions now from what they are saying. Anyway, good for Joe Joyce, because obviously it's a step in the right direction, and the WBA is obviously hitching itself to Joe Joyce and his future prospects. It wants him to campaign in the WBA and continue fighting for their straps, all that sort of stuff. And obviously setting up a showdown down the line with Manuel Charr, and who knows, maybe Anthony Joshua at a later date if he continues to hold the belt. Perhaps a Joe Joyce and Trevor Bryan fight, that could be in the offing down the line too. Jarrell Miller, he's at number 2 here in the ranking. So I'll start at the top. So at number 1 is Trevor Bryan. So this is an interesting case. What's going to happen next? Is he going to be fighting Manuel Charr? The WBA with, different opponents pulling out, because remember, there was going to be a 4-man tournament, and Frizikendo was meant to be fighting Charr, and then Trevor Bryan was meant to be fighting Jarrell Miller, but it completely imploded from the start, with Miller pulling out, going, no, I'm not going to take that, and then shortly after that, it was confirmed that he was fighting Anthony Joshua. And for me, at 3, Frizikendo, this is the most curious element, apart from this Joyce news, because that was sort of a big shocker in itself, but Frizikendo has not signed on to fight Manuel Charr. So what is going on? He was owed a title shot, and this is why he's in the rankings full stop. A lot of people always ask, what's he doing there? He's like 46 years old, hasn't fought since 2014, since he lost to Ruslan Chagaev. What's actually going on here? And he was owed a rematch. It was not forthcoming. He won a court battle to get a title shot. He's almost had it at different points, but he's pulled out through injury, or Manuel Charr has either been injured or was involved in that PED-related scandal about 3 or 4 months ago. But it's just not happened. So he was meant to fight this month against Manuel Charr. They were going to set that up in Germany. It was 60 days from the order, which would have been about March 23rd or so. And then I think it got moved to April, which would have been beyond the 60-day order. And then all of a sudden it didn't happen because Frizikendo didn't sign his end of the paperwork. So how long are they going to persist with the situation with Akendo? Because there comes a point where, they've offered him the title shot. He could have taken it. He could have signed on, but he didn't. and he would have known that it was coming down the pipeline. So is this a case of he's injured, or is it a case that he didn't like the order from the WBA or the terms that were put up by Manuel Cha? Whatever the case, he didn't sign on to take the fight. And when is the WBA going to push back and go, well, actually, we've done everything in our power to give you that title shot, and it hasn't happened, so we have to move on? At some point, you'd have to think, they're going to have to move on. So whether he's waiting for a payout or whether there's some other developments that we're not privy to, it's not clear. But I was thinking, well, he didn't take that Cha fight when he could have and should have. He should be dropped from the rankings. But it hasn't happened. I mean, maybe it will happen in a month when the rankings are re-updated, but sometimes there is a bit of a lag with these things. But yeah, not a good look. If they're able to update Joe Joyce to the gold champion above the rankings, they've obviously put some time and effort into the rankings, and there has been some minor movement throughout the rest of the rankings. So yeah, it is kind of strange in itself what is going on here. Anyway, let's move past Fraser Kendo at number 3, because that ultimately proves sometimes to be a bit of a black hole. But we have Dillian Whyte at number 4. So potentially he may have to utilize these rankings and some of the sanctioning bodies in a way that perhaps he wasn't thinking before if he is in fact signing on to ESPN and Top Rank. They will want to try and position him closer to mandatory title shots for big fights, and who knows what will happen with Dillian Whyte, but he is relatively well placed in all the sanctioning bodies. He's got 2 number 1 rankings, plus also he is ranked here at number 4 in the WBA, not currently ranked by the IBF. That was after he turned down that Kubrat Pulev title eliminator. Number 5, Otto Wallin. So most of these guys from here on down to about 7, so you've got Otto Wallin, Oscar Rivas, Sergey Kuzmin. It's a bit of shuffling, up one place, that sort of stuff, as a result of Joyce dropping out and going to that gold champion status. At number 8, we have Filip Hrgović. He is up 2 places in this month's rankings. He hasn't had a fight since December, but he's still climbing. Filip Hrgović is set to be back in action in April or May, TBA on the opponent front. At number 9, we have Alexander Povetkin, and we know that he's not going to be facing Alexander Usyk next. He had been talk about him fighting Usyk in May in the United States, and previously talk about him fighting in the UK in April. That's probably unlikely now. So what next for Alexander Povetkin, and who will he face? It sounds like potentially he still wants an Usyk fight down the line towards the end of the year. We will have to see. At number 10, and I can never understand this, it must be a case of paying the sanctioning fees, but Kyotaru Fujimoto, who's been relatively inactive, and the opponents that he's been facing have been pretty low level, so I can't really understand how he's got to number 10 here in the rankings. Number 11, Andy Ruiz Jr., he is set to return in April, recently signed with PBC. Michael Hunter, this is an interesting case, because what will he do now if Dillian Whyte leaves Matchroom? Potentially Michael Hunter, who signed on with Eddie Hearn in a promotional capacity, he could be one who could really gain if Dillian Whyte is in fact leaving for ESPN and Top Rank. They will have to start looking at opponents for Hunter, get him onto some cards. It'd be good to see him out again soon. No opponent confirmed at the time that this video was made. Adam Kovnatsky at number 13. So he enters the rankings here at 13. So Joyce drops out, and the guy who comes in the 15 is Adam Kovnatsky at 13. He recently beat Gerald Washington. Very good performance. He's not too far away from a title shot now. 1 fight, 2 fights away perhaps. Targeting through the WBC route more likely than the WBA, but he's snaffled up a WBA ranking here at number 13. And Bogdan Dinu, who hasn't really had many fights in the past year or two, only 1 fight in 2018, and he lost. That was to Jarrell Miller. He's at 14, so it kind of boggles my mind how he's managed to hold on to these rankings. But he will be facing Kubrat Pulev on March 23rd. He is expected to lose, and I think he will give it a go, but I expect Pulev to be too good, too classy for Bogdan Dinu. And at number 15, Dylan Carmen. So he is still ranked in the top 15. Perhaps this is an element of lag associated with this ranking. Yevgeny Romanov beat Carmen in Russia in Ekaterinburg. That was about a week or so ago, 2 weeks ago. And that was a decent performance by Romanov, and potentially he will be a guy who's, 10-0, 11-0 now, that will come in place of Dylan Carmen, perhaps in next month's ranking. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Romanov. If you don't know who he is, you can go check out the post-fight review that I did for the Dylan Carmen-Yevgeny Romanov fight. Romanov was the guy that beat Deontay Wilder in the amateurs, sort of stopped him in their fight. Whether that fight, a rematch in the pros, would happen, it's probably unlikely at this point. Romanov's got a lot of work to do to sort of get him into a position for some big fights, but he's starting to make some strides, and he is a name to watch with a number of other prospects. There's about 50 or 60 decent prospects that are starting to come through, maybe about 10 or 15 that I really think are going to be among the next top contenders in the next couple of years. Romanov is maybe on the bubble of that, but it's hard to say. He is a bit undersized, but certainly he will give it a go, no doubt. But Joe Joyce, a big winner in the WBA's latest rankings. He is now above Trevor Bryan in the pecking order. Adam Kovnatsky, he comes into the rankings at 13, and there's a bit of shuffle in between, and Frizikendo still manages to hold on to number 3 spot. What is going to happen there? Who knows? It's the WBA. Anything could happen. Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.